All right, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to the program. It's Good Afternoon Ghana, and we'll be going through the headlines of the day, the news that is flying around, and the major interviews that we have to grant. We will do that to get the updates of what exactly is going on in and across the country. It's 11th of June 2025. Welcome to the program. So the issues on the table this morning definitely will be dealing with the government's performance 6 months into office. Maybe we have changed the style of the continuous check with government, where it has gotten to, and if it actually thinks that it is on the right path. We'll be getting into that. Felix Ofosu, who is spokesperson for government, will be joining us here in the studio to talk about that. Guess what? The Mortuary Workers Association are raising concerns over their office, and they're saying that they are recording too many bodies being submitted to the morgue. And still, management situation, administration, and whatever they're working with, the tools they're working with, still stays the same. Therefore, putting pressure on their work. We'll be speaking with the team's executives, and we'll bring you some more. The nurses also are still sticking to their decision of putting down their tools. We're already recording allegations of people dying in the hospitals upon meeting nurses who are not on duty due to the strike action. We'll get you some more details of that as well. For now, my colleague is standing by to bring us some more details. The Star Boy, you're welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Annie. Thank you very much. And of course, the issues about the nurses' strike is one that we'll be talking about in this bulletin. The mortuary workers are also speaking. So the details of that coming up shortly. You're still watching the news updates here on Metro TV with me, Desmond Okrekudan. So let's take a look at our headlines now. Coming up in the bulletin, the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association rejects government's appeal for retired nurses and midwives to temporarily return to service, saying the move is not a viable solution. And so on this strike, the Mortuary Workers Association of Ghana is raising concerns over a noticeable increase in the number of bodies being brought to mortuaries across the country as a result of the ongoing nurses' strike. We'll get to hear from them. And to education, as the basic education certificate examination takes off today, the Minister of Education is urging the West African Examinations Council to ensure the timely delivery of examination materials to enable students complete as scheduled. And also coming up, the Office of the Special Prosecutor detains 3 directors of Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited in connection with an ongoing investigation into the company's contract with the Ghana Revenue Authority. The details of these and then more coming up shortly. Hello again, many thanks for joining us. Let's get into the details of the stories, and we begin from the Supreme Court. And the court has overturned the contempt conviction issued against Ernest Kumi, the New Patriotic Party member of Parliament for Akwetia, by the High Court in Koforidua. The Apex Court also barred Justice Emmanuel Senyor Ahmed Dahe from proceeding to sentence the MP. The decision follows a judicial review application filed by Mr. Kumi challenging the High Court's ruling, led by legal counsel Gary Nemakumafo, who also serves as the MPP's Director of Legal Affairs. Mr. Kumi's team argued that the High Court lacked the jurisdiction to entertain the election petition that led to an initial injunction against the MP. According to Mr. Nemaku, Ghana's electoral laws require that an election petition be filed within 21 days of the publication of certified results in the official gazette. Let's listen to the legal team.
Okay, so if you would remember, the case is in 2 parts. There was one on contempt, which through Nemaku, the applicant, Honorable Ernest Kumi, filed a certiorari application to have the contempt and the conviction by the Koforidua court quashed. You remember that, right? So by decision of 4-1 today, the Supreme Court has agreed with Counsel Nimako and said that the contempt application, its hearing, and the subsequent conviction on it all has been quashed. So as we speak right now, Honorable Ernest Yakumi remains the MP, the elected and valid MP of the good people of Apetia. Thank you. And on the second issue was the matter of the petition itself. On that, the court said that the judge, the Learned Trial Court judge in Koforidua, can no longer sit on that matter because his conduct has shown that he should not be allowed to continue sitting on the matter. Yes. So even though we may go back to Koforidua, but he won't be the judge to sit on the substantive matter.
Thank you.
But our main contention at the Supreme Court was that the contempt, its hearing, the conviction subsequent to the contempt, the sentencing. If you remember, there were even attempts to have Ernest Yakumi arrested. Honorable MP, all has been quashed by the Supreme Court. So as we speak right now, Honorable Ernest Yakumi remains the MP of the good people of Apetia.
Thank you.
To conclude that the injunction itself also has been.
Now, counsel for the NDC's parliamentary candidate, Henry Boatiadom, opposed the claims, insisting that the High Court acted within its legal mandate. I'll bring you details of that subsequently. But away from that, onto the strike by the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. Now, the Minister for Health, Kwabena Minta-Kando, has called for calm and urged continued dialogue as the nationwide strike by the nurses and midwives enters its second week, warning that immediate implementation of their demands could derail Ghana's economic recovery. Addressing a joint press conference with the Ministry of Finance at the Jubilee House on Tuesday, the minister acknowledged the legitimacy of the concerns raised by the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, but cautioned that the financial implications of their demands poses a significant threat to the national economy.
Assuming office, we have, on behalf of government, engaged several times with the GNRMA to explore the best possible avenue to approve and implement the new conditions of service. While expressing our deep regret over the current impasse leading to the strike and the suffering patients enduring, the ministry states emphatically that government appreciates the invaluable contributions of Ghanaian nurses and midwives to the development of the health sector. Government remains committed to the needed engagement that will lead to the approval and implementation of the new conditions of service for nurses and midwives. Accordingly, government has directed the Ministry of Finance and the Fair Wages and Salary Commission to, as a matter of urgency, lead the development of a roadmap to ensure a smooth implementation of the process. We engage the leadership of all Nurses and Midwives Association within the health sector on 30th May 2025 to address their challenges and discuss the subsequent roadmap leading to the implementation of the new conditions of service. Fortunately, the other associations supported my intervention, with the exception of the GRNMA, which declined and proceeded to declare the strike on the 2nd of June 2025, despite the NLC caution. The National Labour Commission on Thursday, 5th June 2025, summoned all stakeholders to an emergency meeting to address the matter. However, the GRNMA failed to attend the meeting.
Now, on his part, the Deputy Finance Minister Thomas Nyakwampim has reiterated the ministry's commitment to sit with the aggrieved nurses and find a solution to the problem.
We want to show our commitment to help in resolving this important issue, because our nurses are very, very critical to healthcare delivery, and we appreciate what they do. But the reality is that we have over 120,000 nurses, and the implementation of the current condition of service that they are demanding will have serious consequences for the budget. In fact, if we fully implement it, we are going to add in excess of 2 billion cedis to the compensation budget. We have all committed that in our resolve to reset the economy of this country, we must maintain a 1.5% primary balance surplus every.
Well, still on the strike by the nurses and midwives, but we'll head to Parliament now because the minority in the House has urged government to reconsider its approach to the ongoing nurses and midwives strike, emphasizing the need for constructive engagement rather than legal action. Speaking on the issue at a presser in Accra on Tuesday, ranking member on the Health Committee in the House, Dr. Nana Ayew-Afriyie, stressed that the demands outlined in the collective bargaining agreement are reasonable and justified. However, he criticized government's failure to engage the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association since January, leading to escalating protests.
We in minority don't believe that the nurses are at any fault. It is their right. They are seeking their right. I would want to know any of you who think this just is not justified in Appendix A of their CBA. Is it the issue of rural incentive allowance that was agreed, that is meant for nurses and midwives in the rural areas so that we can have nurses and midwives in the rural area? Which of them would you say is not legitimate? Is it the issue of fuel allowances, which has been historical since 60s for these people? Is it the issue of uniform allowance, which has been there since the 1960s? It couldn't have been changed in any republic, and it cannot be changed under a previous government. It cannot be changed now. We are here to plead with the nurses to understand that even if governments see the need to engage them, they should go with the good faith with Ghanaians at heart. Because getting all the money without the lives that we have lost brings no joy to anyone. So as minority, we are mindful of the fact that we are not stoking it up and asking them to prolong the strike. We are only asking them to be merciful as far as the tables are concerned, that when they go to sit, they must be merciful to see the need to be reasonable.
Well, still in Parliament, yesterday there was a near brawl in the House as members of the minority prevented the marshals from taking the Member of Parliament for Efidiasi Asokori, Dr. Ayew-Afriyie, from the chamber following the First Deputy Speaker's directive. The minority in Parliament have accused the First Deputy Speaker, Bernard Anyafo, of partisanship for failing to admit the statement that urged the government to be responsible in the matter of the striking nurses. Ranking member on the Health Committee, Dr. Nana Ayew-Afriyie, told journalists after proceedings were adjourned following the disagreement in the House that the First Deputy Speaker, rather than admitting the statement, threatened to walk them out of the House. He's being extremely partisan, and that is what the minority had to say in the House. And so that was what happened in the House yesterday. Meanwhile, the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association has rejected the government's appeal for retired nurses and midwives to temporarily return to service, saying the move is not a viable solution to the ongoing nationwide strike. Now, responding to the Health Minister Kwabena Minta Akando's call on retired health workers to step in as a stopgap measure, the association's Vice President Samuel Akologo described the suggestion as misguided and insensitive to the realities facing retired professionals. He emphasized that many retired nurses face the same socio-economic struggles as the general population, making them unfit for the physical and emotional demands of returning to active service. According to Mr. Akologo, most of them left the service early due to poor working conditions and cannot be relied upon to resolve a systemic crisis. Now, on the impact of this strike action by the DRNMA, now the Mortuary Workers Association of Ghana has raised concerns over a noticeable increase in the number of bodies being brought to mortuaries across the country. This development comes in the wake of the ongoing nationwide strike by the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. The industrial action follows a deadlock in negotiations after the government requested to delay the implementation of the nurses' new conditions of service until 2026, a proposal the association has firmly rejected. Now, the General Secretary for the Mortuary Workers Association, Richard Kofi Jordan, described the situation as alarming, attributing the daily surge in the number of people who have passed to the impact of the nurses' strike. Meanwhile, the association is also expected to meet the National Labour Commission today, Wednesday, June 11, to address long-standing grievances raised by its members regarding unresolved concerns over poor conditions of service, including low wages, inadequate personal protective equipment, and unsafe working environment, issues the association has been raising since 2019 and 2020. And definitely we'll be keeping our tabs on the impact of the strike by the nurses and midwives. But away from that, to some other stories. And there was panic and confusion at the offices of Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited on Monday, June 10, following a targeted raid by security operatives from the office of the Special Prosecutor, which led to the arrest of 3 company directors. The operation, which was carried out under court orders, was supported by personnel from the National Security Secretariat. According to sources familiar with the matter, the OSP is in the advanced stages of its investigation into the controversial contract between the SML and the government, and investigators are said to be particularly interested in assessing electronic data stored on the company's servers as part of efforts to build a comprehensive case. This development comes amid intensified scrutiny of the deal and the OSP's broader efforts to hold individuals accountable for suspected financial irregularities. Well, staying with the office of the Special Prosecutor, the prosecutor himself, Kisi Jabing, has called for a mechanism to verify and trace assets declared by public officials, but opposed making such documents publicly accessible. According to the Special Prosecutor, such a move would be sufficient to assure the public of the system's effectiveness in promoting transparency and accountability among public officials. He made the call at the African Union Advisory Board Against Corruption conference here in Accra.
Corruption prevention is preferable to after-the-fact models of fighting corruption. It is more productive and cost-effective. Better to prevent the outbreak of a stitch than to seek to sow it after it ensues. These pragmatic considerations should guide our plans on this architecture. The focus should be on a system which will stand the test of time, Your Excellency. With this in mind, that while no anti-corruption system is fail-safe, ours should be reasonably able to withstand attack. On this reckoning, we should highlight lifestyle audit non-conviction-based asset recovery. Global anti-corruption best practices indicate that broad-based lifestyle audit, non-conviction-based asset recovery presents the fairest and optimal method of frontally addressing corruption and unexplained wealth in both public and private contexts, though it is not without controversy. However, it is gratifying to note the receptiveness of our jurisprudence of lifestyle audit under Article 2864 of the Constitution. However, it is strictly limited in scope and outlook, as it only applies to certain public officers and only in respect of the asset declaration regime. Then again, there is no prescribed sanction beyond the declaration that property or assets acquired after the initial declaration of assets and which are not reasonably attributable to reasonable sources will be deemed to have been acquired in contravention of the Constitution. Further, this problem is exacerbated by the fact that our criminal anti-corruption provisions in the Criminal Offences Act 1960, Act 29, and other enactments look primarily to public officers.
Now from that to education, and the Minister of Education, Haruna Idrisu, has urged the West African Examinations Council, WAEC, to ensure the timely delivery of examination materials to enable students complete their basic education certificate examination, BECE, as scheduled. The minister made the call during a visit to some BECE centers where he expressed concern about the need for the smooth conduct of the examination.
Our students who have gone through training and the basic education of the Ghana Education Service. I'm accompanied by the Bono Regional Minister, Director General of GES, the head of the Inspectorate, to our BECE students across the country, numbering 603,000 who are undertaking these exams from today, the 11th to the 17th of June. An important milestone in their academic life and journey. We're encouraging them to have faith and trust and confidence in themselves and what they have learned over the period, and to consider exam as a normal process. It is just to test the knowledge and skills they have acquired over the period. There must be zero tolerance for exam malpractices across the country. And these young children represent the future and wealth of our country, and they need to grow with integrity. Let no one of them be associated with any exam malpractice. We also would want to encourage the West Africa Examination Council to be very timely with the delivery of exam papers and other logistics in order that the exam can start on time and end on time, no matter the location of the exams. This morning visit with the regional minister, supported by the Director General, have exposed us to what government must urgently be looking at. One, the lighting system in the classroom.
Now, the Member of Parliament for La Dade Kotopong and Deputy Local Government Minister Rita Odole Soa has set aside a 5,000 cedis reward for the best performing boy or girl from both private and public schools in the upcoming Basic Education Certificate examination in her constituency. The legislator made the promise when she distributed mathematical sets and other items to over 3,000 students to motivate them ahead of the exams.
The distribution of the examination equipment is a usual tradition undertaken by the Member of Parliament every year with the aim of supporting particularly those who may not have the resources to purchase them. However, the gifting of 5,000 cedis each to best performing students is an innovation and an extra motivation to squeeze the best out of the students.
We presented the dummy check, so as soon as the exams is over and then we get to know who emerges first, we're going to do the physical presentation of the cash to support the parents. Yes, NDC, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, he's putting more into the free SHS to ensure that parents have a relief. But this is also to motivate the children, the students, and then support the parents as well, even as the awards go to school. And I believe it's going to be a motivation for other children.
On the issue of malpractices, the Municipal Chief Executive, Alfredus Ni Anyete, expressed hope that the students will uphold the constituency's integrity of no records of malpractice ever since the introduction of the BECE.
I, for one, am a product of 5 garrison education units at Tele Services in 1998. We prepared the way they are preparing now for the examination. We didn't entertain any fear, and we wrote the exams and did not record any more practice. Ever since that time, we are not known to have recorded any exam malpractice. So they should look at us as examples and then go into the examination hall from tomorrow to next week Wednesday with faith and prepare very well. Make sure they do not entertain any kind of examination irregularity, and victory will be theirs. They will come out with flying colors.
The Municipal Education Director, Abiba Kutuma, noted arrangements are far advanced for the exams, adding both officers and students have been psyched and warned to avoid malpractice.
We are well prepared. We have put in all our officers who are going to do the monitoring for tomorrow. The movement for the MP, the MC, and the directors' teams for monitoring has also been put in place. And so all is set.
And we wish the students the very best in the examination. Away from that, a mechanized solar facility has been commissioned at the Amrahia Community School by the China-Europe International Business School to aid in providing potable water for students. The Executive Director for the International Needs Ghana, Cromwell Awade, speaking at the commissioning, said the project will create a conducive environment for teaching and learning in the school.
The water project, which includes the installation of a mechanized water supply and filtration system, was initiated by the Global Executive MBA 2024 cohort of the China-Europe International Business School as part of their environmental, social and governance effort to positively impact communities through sustainable development and access to essential resources. The mechanized solar facility will provide potable water to over 300 students in the Amrahia Community School. Executive Director for International Needs Ghana, who was grateful to the China-Europe International Business School for the gesture, said the facility will create a conducive environment for teaching and learning, assuring its maintenance will be prioritized.
It has come at a very opportune time when water bills are rising, and then we have our own system which is mechanized and purified, and it is solar, and it is of a great help to us. So this water system is providing water to children, and therefore at all times and all material moments it's our responsibility to ensure that these children have safe and potable water. So it's top on our priority to ensure that the water system is maintained.
General Manager of Linsider Product Development and Manufacturing from the China-Europe International Business School, Zakaria Bualem, said the facility will not only impact the students but the economy of the community.
We could have the opportunity to come and discuss about businesses, but we wanted as a first step to come and prove that we can start with an ESG project, an impact project with Amrahia Community School. Offering this water pumping station to kids to start and continue their education journey in the best situations. We know.
Now, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Tourism Authority, Mame Efua Huajeto, has officially launched Festac Africa 2025. The festival, to be held from September 21 to 27 this year, is expected to boost the tourism capacity of the country.
Festival of Black and African Arts and Culture, Festac Africa 2025, is a week-long festival that brings together leaders, innovators, artists, and wellness advocates from across the continent and the globe. Set to take place over 7 days, the festival is designed to highlight the importance of health and wellness as critical pillars for sustainable development, while celebrating Africa's rich cultural heritage and natural beauty as drivers of tourism and economic growth.
We want Africa to be one. When you dream, especially our youth, our children that are starting business today, your market is not Accra, your market is not Ghana. Your market is Africa. Think big. Your market is not 35 million people, it's 1.2 billion people. So we'll be an exhibition there for you to meet people globally and think big in terms of changing lives.
Launching the festival, Chief Executive Officer for the Ghana Tourism Authority, Efua Huajeto, mentioned that the week-long festival will boost the country's tourism.
They're bringing to us carnivals. I don't think they mentioned it, but we're going to have huge carnivals as part of the event. We're going to have beautiful stage, with African culture. dancing, drama, displaying who we are within, displaying our passion, displaying our music, displaying our boldness and our color. And that is what we are going to do. And that is what we normally do for Tourism Month. The only difference is that it's going to be 10 times bigger than we have done in the past.
Grace Mumo is the Chief Executive Officer of Festec Africa Renaissance Festival.
You need to tell your story yourself. You need to own your story, and you need to own your platform. So your story can be told and can be heard by you or from you to the rest of the world. And that's why Festec Africa platform is the platform that gives that opportunity to those who really want to listen and understand the African story. It's a deep story. We have a lot of scars, but it's a story that we are using to amplify our narrative and say we are ready. And the world is ready to listen to Africa now.
Festec Africa 2025 celebration is slated to hold in Accra from September 21 to 27, 2025 under the theme Harnessing Health, Culture, Trade and Tourism for Sustainable Economic Growth.
And that's all for the news updates. Many thanks for joining us. I am Desmond Okwekudan. So handing over back to Annie Fampofu for the rest of the program. Annie.
Yeah. So, Desmond, we're having an engagement with Felix Ofosu this afternoon, and we want to look at half the year, what has happened so far, if the government is satisfied. What's on your mind? What do you think that should be the focus? So far, I'm looking at how they are, or the government is trying to fight corruption.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any other issue.
Well, I think that's one of the very important aspects that we'll be looking at. Of course, looking at the fight. The president has mentioned several times that he wants to fight corruption, and that's something that we're looking at. Of course, I'm also looking at, the youth unemployment, and I've seen the Youth Employment Agency, YEA, bringing up a lot of initiatives to help the youth in this country. And also yesterday the conversation about the data prices and what we had seen. So there are very good stuff that have begun already, and we're hoping for many other nice stuff for the youth.
Now that you mentioned the data price, how do you think people actually got the understanding a bit off? Because I think a lot of people got the impression as though data prices or data cost was gone up. Yes.
I think later the graphical explanation of what it was. So if you were buying at this price and we're getting this bundle, you were going to get more than that. So 10% increase of that. And I'm sure people on MTN are very happy about that. Telecel also, and also that is Airtel Tigo. So it's a good thing. Until yesterday, there were a lot of agitations on social media about the prices and all that. But after the press conference by the sector minister, I've seen a lot of people have expressed excitement about the new move.
It's good you actually mentioned the graphical explanation to it, because a lot of people are not too familiar with the telcos and their language. So you can actually end up confusing people just in case you don't actually give that further explanation. Anyway, thank you for the details. We'll get into the matters later. Thank you for your time. Thank you. All right, so that's Desmond Okwekudan. So we'll take a breather. When we come back, we'll get into talking with Felix Ofosu.
Whether you're a wholesaler, retailer, or consumer, MNC Logistics and Trading is your trusted partner in minerals and food commodities trading. Experience the difference with MNC Logistics and Trading for your commodities trading. We operate a well-equipped laboratory that smelts and assays gold to ensure transparent, credible, and reliable minerals transactions. Our general food commodity market deals with imports and exports of food products such as rice, sugar, and grains. We pride ourselves on delivering products that meet the highest standards of quality and taste. With our expertise in international trading and logistics, we bridge customers far and wide. Locate us at number 4 Neosai Interfo Avenue, East Legon, Accra. Call us on 030-299-8246 or visit our website www.mnclogisticsandtrading.com. MNC Logistics and Trading, hub of confidence.
Smart, smooth, interactive, and a built-in Android active panel made for modern work and home. For corporate clients and university students, enjoy top quality 10th generation Toshiba laptops built for performance, power, clarity, and speed, all in one desktop. At Mycom JA Computers, get a laptop for as low as 1,000 Ghana cedis. All products are imported from the USA with a 1-year warranty. Visit Mycom JA Computers today and elevate your tech.
Some movies change the world, and you'll find them elsewhere. Mnet Movies 4 is just in it to change your mood. Great. Yes, I can. They turn an ordinary night into something awesome. Make you laugh louder, smile bigger, and feel like a kid all over again.
Yay! This is so much fun!
The only thing our movies are seriously serious about is making you happy. All month long.
Ah!
On Mnet Movies 4 for the easy, cheesy, silly, funny, snort laugh classic movies of your life.
You cannot fleece a country like this. One would have thought that the corruption cases were enough, but it's even made Ghanaians numb. Now Ghanaians are not surprised again. This corruption does not shock Ghanaians the way it used to shock us. Today when there's a scandal, people are like, oh, because they are all tired. Everybody is tired. And so even in the twilight, when you are about to exit office, you are still coming up with schemes to steal Ghanaians' money. But I say that this won't happen. An NDC government under me will not accept or recognize this SML agreement. We will not accept or recognize the SML agreement. Parliament is investigating it. The president has hurriedly gone to get KPMG to come and audit it. Whatever audit they do, I say we won't accept or respect any agreement with SML. And for the money that they've taken already, we will hold. I mean, you cannot fleece a country like this. One would have thought that the corruption cases were enough, but it's even made Ghanaians numb. Now Ghanaians are not surprised again. This corruption does not shock Ghanaians the way it used to shock us. Today when there's a scandal, people are like, oh, because they are all tired. Everybody is tired. And so even in the twilight, when you are about to exit office, you are still coming up with schemes to steal Ghanaians' money. But I say that this won't happen. An NDC government under me will not accept or recognize this SML agreement. We will not accept or recognize the SML agreement. Parliament is investigating it. The president has hurriedly gone to get KPMG to come and audit it. Whatever audit they do, I say we won't accept or respect any agreement with SML. And for the money that they've taken already, we will hold them to account for.
All right, you're welcome back to the program. It's Good Afternoon, Ghana. Let's now pursue our interviews that we have scheduled for the day. Thank you to Desmond Okwekudanso for bringing us the news briefs. Now, we have a special one with Felix Ofosu, who is actually the presidential spokesperson. He's also a member of parliament for Abra Asebu Kwamankese constituency. So he sits in parliament and he also performs the work of government. He's joined us in the studio, so let's welcome him. Mr. Ofosu, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
To you.
Good afternoon.
We're grateful that you made time with us. It's been, a moment of squeezing some time out of your busy schedule. So thank you so much for your time. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, firstly, how's your constituency doing?
Well, the constituency is okay. Today, close to 3,000 pupils who are in GHS 3 commenced their basic education certificate examination. So on Monday, I was there to wish them well and make some presentation of examination materials.
What did you give them?
To them?
Math sets?
Oh yeah, math sets. And the Education Directorate, as well as the District Assembly itself, appealed for support to enable them monitor and invigilate the examination. So I had to make some donation in that regard as well. The objective is to improve standards of education in the district and ensure that the students that are trained in the district are as competitive as any other that you find in Ghana. And I hope that these will make a bit of a difference in order that we see that improvement that we all yearn for.
Are we still, let me just push in this question, are we still not considering a continuous assessment system for BECE as prepared to get into free SHS? I think it's been suggested by some educational analysts who think that we have to consider that so that we merge the two. You finish free SHS, it's just a continuous assessment. I mean, BECE.
Well, that's a matter for the education authorities to consider. I think there's merit in that argument. It's an argument that has been going on for quite some time, even when I was in JHS. So it is something that can be considered. And I believe that once those considerations are undertaken, the best approach should emerge, which would inure to the benefit of the entire education system. Yeah.
All right. How about your constituency? If the nurses' strike has actually hit your constituency too?
Well, we have a district hospital, which is the Abrodunkwa District Hospital, which is not in the best of shapes, by the way. So one of the things I have been doing is to engage the health ministry and officials there with a view to getting them to make some improvements in the situation. There are a number of CHIPS compounds as well, and a health center in Mortuary. The health center in Mortuary will soon be transformed into a model health center, and that will come with some renovation and upgrade, and that would significantly improve healthcare in Mortuary, which is the most densely populated area in the constituency. It is obvious that the strike by members of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association has affected healthcare delivery in the district. But as the health minister indicated yesterday at the press briefing that we held, efforts are underway to ensure a speedy resolution of the strike so that patients everywhere, including the Abrasibu-Kwamankesi constituency, will have the restoration of full health services so that they do not suffer unduly.
Having spoken or interacted with the health minister, does it look like he can find solution to it as soon as possible?
Oh, of course. We are engaged in efforts to ensure
because
that
we've heard him talk about the budget. We've heard him talk about.
Well, that is true. That is true. We value the services of nurses, and I have had cause to say previously that they are far too important to stay away from healthcare services, and any protracted strike action will undermine healthcare delivery in the country. And at the end of the day, it is patients who will suffer. So we, as a government, are very, very, very eager to have the matter resolved so that they can go back. Except that we have indicated that the current situation we have does not bode well for factoring in the concerns that they have regarding the conditions of service. It has not been budgeted for. And any effort to disburse monies that have not been budgeted for to the quantum that we are talking about will significantly derail the national budget and lead us back into the fiscal slippages that resulted in the hardships that all of us lamented and which led to
when we were drafting the budget
out
against
of
this
the
year.
NPP.
Did you actually see that condition of service?
To be honest with you, we took over office in February.
Because we know that if you actually adopt any new program for the nurses as they are demanding, it will take effect. It should take effect in 2026.
Indeed, originally the agreement was reached in May last year, and the effective date was July. In other words, implementation should have started in July.
Last year.
Only God knows why the
Akufo-Addo
Bawumia administration failed to implement it. I must indicate that I have engaged the people in government who would otherwise have been the ones that the nurses would have dealt with when we came into power. Ministers took over in February this year. And my checks indicate that neither the finance minister nor the health minister has had this kind of interaction with them prior to the drafting of the budget. It's entirely possible that they engaged maybe some directors at the Ministry of Health.
To the drafting of the budget.
Yes.
But after the drafting, they have had meetings with them.
Yeah, but once the budget is drawn up, nothing else can be added. That's the point that the finance ministry has made. That if the expenditure is unbudgeted for, we are talking of expenditure that runs into billions of Ghana cedis. That kind of expenditure cannot be accommodated in a budget in which it was not included in the first place. And that is the difficulty that we have. It is also imperative that given the quantum of resources and the impact that it will have, even if it is budgeted for, there's a need for some further engagement to arrive at a position that the budget can accommodate, which also addresses the concerns of the nurses. And that is where we are at the moment. And that is why government is appealing to the nurses to come to the negotiation table so that discussions can be held with a view to addressing this satisfactorily all around.
I mean, well, we've tried contacting any of the executives. I'm told the president and the secretary both are out of the country. If there are any executives watching or anyone who wants to provide information, you may want to let us know, because what we're told is that they were still by the negotiation table and still embarked on the strike, because what their position really is the document has already been signed, just adopted and implemented, as would the demand from the new administration. And if you want to know, I'll just mention a few things captured in their conditions of service that they're demanding. These are the allowances that they demand. You have uniform allowance, you have tools allowance, we have additional duty allowance, which is about 48,000, call-in allowance. I don't know what that means, the call-in allowance. We have commuted overtime allowance, we have permanent posting allowance, temporary posting allowance, funeral grants. Funeral grant is 588,000. We have fuel allowance, non-basic allowance, on-call facilitation allowance, 13th month allowance, which is 48. 480 million. Oh, all right. I think it's in millions rather. So in all, total is 4,100,000, if I'm correct. That's what it is. We have others. Okay. So in the approval rate of allowance for nurses, allied and public health facility, the document also captures that we have acting allowance, we have additional duty allowance, overtime. Okay, that's what I actually, the breakdown is there, but the total is what I mentioned, or the number of allowances that they are demanding within the new conditions of service they are seeking. And this is important because people's lives are, in danger. In fact, people are reporting of losing their loved ones in the hospitals. So I'm just really worried about how government is adding some urgency to this.
The government is extremely worried. Our duty, first and foremost, is to ensure that we don't lose lives in the wake of this strike action. And that is why we have insisted that the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association should come to the table for discussions that will ensure an end to the strike so that we avert the loss of lives. That is why also yesterday the health minister announced that pending the resolution of this strike, government was taking some steps to mitigate the impact of the strike. And one of them was the publication of alternative healthcare facilities where patients can seek healthcare, where nurses are not on strike, many of which are public hospitals, but whose nurses do not form part of the group that is going on demonstration, on strike, right, or that has gone on strike. And that is how we intend to ensure that the impact of this strike is mitigated, even as we continue to engage to resolve it. So government is extremely concerned, just as concerned as you are, if not more, because ultimately we are the ones who bear the brunt if unfortunate loss of lives occur. Yeah.
Do you, I'm not sure if you have information on whether or not we kicked in the labor law duties and responsibilities of the employer, both the employer and the employee, and what they're supposed to do, because as essential workers, this is not what we were expecting, at least according to
ordinarily, all of us are bound by the laws of Ghana, and therefore every action that we take must conform with the law. But I'm not sure that there's a time to resort to legalese. as a tool towards having this matter addressed. What matters is that an amicable solution is found and that all parties commit to sitting down to engage in dialogue, which will result in the resolution that we all want. And that is where government continues to appeal to the nurses to come to the table for discussions. Ultimately, we appreciate that they need adequate, if you like, conditions of service to be able to render the essential work that they continue to do for us. But that must also fit into the national budget and not jeopardize our collective future and not throw the economy out of gear and lead all of us into the hardships that were suffered in the recent past. That is all that we have said. And I think that is a reasonable position that should
it
lay the
depends on
foundation.
what you term reasonable. It might be reasonable.
No, but the
to
point
you,
is that government can only give what it has. It's a fundamental basis for managing a country. You cannot give more than you have. So when a demand is made,
but
that
must
demand
be agreed by the other party.
But the way that you ensure agreement is that the parties must sit and talk. When you leave the negotiation table, it is unlikely that agreement will be reached. And that is why there's this rather unfortunate stalemate. But we are willing to sit around the table, and we expect the members of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association to adopt the same posture so that we can sit and discuss the matters.
You say it's not, a moment to resort to legalese, whatever. But let me read this. So, Section 97, Clause 1 of the Labour Law, it says that all parties to the negotiation of a collective agreement shall negotiate in good faith and make every reasonable effort to reach an agreement. What it did not explain is, how long that negotiation should last. Because the last time I spoke with the General Secretary, he was saying that, how long will they continue to talk to government? Because they started dealing with that with the previous administration before this government came in, and they expect that something will be done. The Clause 2 says that for the purpose of subsection 1, either party to the negotiation shall make available to the other party information relevant to the subject matter of negotiation. I'm sure all that is done. But I'm told, let's go on to the phone lines. I'm told that Philemon Ajapong, who is a deputy PRO for the GRNMA, has joined us via phone to, respond to a few issues. Mr. Ajapong, you're welcome. Good afternoon to you. Welcome to Good Afternoon, Ghana.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So, firstly, let me ask you the state of your strike as we speak.
As we speak, our members are on strike.
So you're still holding on to your guns?
I don't know. The Honorable is in the studio. They have what it takes to call us back to work. And I don't know why they are keeping on at that posture or that position that is making our members not amenable to the call for or call off of the strike.
They have what it takes. First of all, he's not the Minister for Health. He's government spokesperson anyway, and you are doing the direct negotiation with the Minister of Health. So did you listen to the Minister's presser yesterday, though?
I did listen to him.
And what did you pick or what did you take away?
What I took away is not different from what I took away from the meeting we had with them and the previous engagement that we have had. Their posturing and their admonition that we should come back to the table is not different. We have not gone off the table. We are ready for negotiation. We are ready for every discussion they have invited us to. But to what end? What are we going to discuss? And what is the aftermath of the discussion? Is it the same story or the same chorus that we keep singing? Is that what necessarily wants to hear?
Okay, so when you mention posturing, I'm a little confused because as far as I'm concerned, the posturing from government side is that of a plea. Government has continuously made a plea. We've seen government communicators kneel down on TV to beg you. So I'm sure that the posturing is a bit humbling. It is you rather that we're seeing that your posturing is like holding a gun to the head of government.
Oh, that's rather unfortunate. In fact, if I had my own way, I've been on other TV stations and radio, so I couldn't make it to your studio. I would have knelt down or lied down prostrate to also plead with government so that you can see that our posturing is not so different or even more devastating. Let me put this on record, that as leaders, we are in the crossroad, we are in the middle. When we go to our members, we are pleading with our members to agree that we call off this strike action so that we can heed to the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian who cannot afford treatment abroad or the private, hospitals. But our members are saying that the employer has not demonstrated any good faith by excluding their conditions of service in the budget, by calling on retired nurses and students to come and fill in the gap, thinking that they can do the work that they are doing. So it means their conditions of service is not of priority anymore. So that is the position that I put across.
Oh, so it's the government's attempts to bring in retired nurses and so forth is what you're seeing as negative posturing.
Will that solve the problem? Will it be able to succumb to the pressures? Why not attend to what is at stake? Why not address the concern that has been tailored to you or brought onto the table, instead of taking mitigating factors which hitherto will not solve the problem?
So are you ignoring government's explanation of not having captured this in the budget, in the national budget, and therefore it's pleading with you to allow it to work within the budget so that we don't throw the whole nation out of gear? Is that not, enough plea?
Who made the budget, and whose responsibility is it to capture the conditions of service in the budget? Were the government representatives not at the meetings? Were they not the same people we sat to have the negotiation with? Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, yes, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance were on the table with us. Okay, but so is it our duty to come out of our units to come and prepare budget for government?
But my understanding is this new negotiation, was agreed upon last year. It was expected to be implemented last year, July.
Sure.
Right?
That is correct.
So that means that it was situated in a certain budget within a certain period, not so?
If it is situated in a certain budget in a certain period, that component of the budget has not been expended. So where is that money?
You have to check if there was allocation made for it. Is that the information you have? Was there an allocation?
Is that our duty, my dear? Is that our duty to go and check the books to look for allocation for what is rightfully ours when it's not our role?
Okay.
Look, government representatives were in the meeting, and throughout the process, they sought for mandate to situate these conditions of service in the budget. In fact, what is even put out by the Honorable Deputy Minister is a bit erroneous. The figures he's putting out, we have also done our computation, and it doesn't come even up to about 30 or 40% of what he put across.
You mean so the Deputy Minister for Finance?
Exactly. Yesterday's presser, what they released in terms of figures, it doesn't accumulate into that amount. What we have put together in terms of
what have you put together? What did you come up with?
We have put together the allowances. We have put together what is due all nurses in terms of the collective agreement that was signed, and then what is due are sections. Not all the collective agreement goes for everybody. The book and research allowance is just for the fraction of people who are teachers. They are just about 2,000. They are not all the 128,000 people that are going to qualify for book and research allowance.
Okay.
The rural incentive allowance is for those working in the rural areas. They are just a fraction of the 128,000 that we put across. The on-call facilitating allowance is for a section of nurses and midwives. What will go for all nurses and midwives is the 8% on non-basic, and then the the uniform allowance. The uniform allowance is just 1,000 Ghana cedi for every nurse per year. It's not every day, every month.
Okay.
The 13th month salary is to be paid by the facilities.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know how he ended up with that calculation and how he arrived at that figure.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Felix, you have a word for him before he goes off.
Oh no, we can continue.
Okay, Mr. Japan, we'll leave it here. So as it stands now, we're continuing with the strike until further notice.
on government to say something that our members will listen. We as leaders are ready to sit with government anytime, sit with the employer anytime for any kind of discussion. But if we continue to sing the same chorus, come back to work, people are dying. We have come back to work, people were dying in the past, and our conditions of service were not implemented. And nurses and midwives now have lost that patience because of the ill treatment and unfair treatment that has been meted us to us in the past.
Okay. All right, Mr. Philemon Japan, we're grateful for your time this afternoon. Thank you. And he is a deputy PRO for the GRNMA team. That's the Nurses and the Midwives Association that are on strike now. Okay, so we'll move away from that and then let's turn our attention to...
No, but there are a few things that I need
you
to
want
correct.
to respond to? Okay.
The people who do the paying or the payments are the people at the finance ministry. They have looked at the conditions of service and they are indicating to you that it runs into billions of Ghana cedis. So that is a fact. The second point also is that everything that government does must be done responsibly. No decision that government takes should result in difficulty for all of us. So when you make a demand, and that demand cannot fit into the budget, government must be candid to tell you that no, these things that you're asking for will be difficult. Yes, it was negotiated by government. Government is a continuum, but it was the MPP government. There's a reason why governments change. Why? The MPP government was putting up a cathedral when we came to power. We have not continued to put it up. So it is not everything that they did that is necessarily in the interest of the country. So the fact that we have come to meet some conditions of service does not mean that we cannot tweak it in order for it to fit into the budget. So it does not endanger all of us. That's why I said that you give what you have. What they are asking for now, in terms of the quantum, makes it difficult for us to respond now. That is why we are saying that come to the table. So let us make offers that meets you adequately, whilst at the same time not endangering the national budget. We have not postured any way beyond this. The second point also is that if you say that because government has said that in the interim, whilst you have stayed away from the hospitals and people are suffering, public-spirited retired nurses or anybody who has the skill and wants to help should come forward, and that is the reason why you will continue to stay away. That is most unfortunate. Government cannot sit down and allow people to lose their lives at a time when the nurses are not coming to the table to have discussions. We have to act in order to avert life. So whatever action is necessary to prevent that is the responsibility of government, and that we have done. That we will do. I don't see how, if you are a nurse and you are going on strike, and you insist that you won't come onto the table, and government says, okay, I'm putting in these measures to prevent loss of lives, it should result in anger that makes you stay away. That, for me, is not fair to the very people whose resources will be used to pay all public service workers. The people who go to the hospital, the patients who are suffering today, it is their taxes that we put together to pay everybody who works in the public sector. So when there are times of difficulty and alternative interim arrangements are put in place, I think that it is fair that we acknowledge that, even as we make efforts to come to the table for discussions to be had. So I think that that is where we are at the moment. I'm hopeful that in the end, reason will prevail, and in the next few days, we should overcome this particular challenge.
We're hoping for that too, in furtherance of this matter. Okay, so let's get into the area of oral. Felix, we have seen, it's 6 months into government, right? And we've seen quite a number of efforts by government to pursue persons that you think have been involved in financial malpractices against the nation. And I'm sure that's what you also campaigned on before you came into government. So far, how far? We have the issue of Ken Oforiatta, which is probably, I think, the biggest, because he was the finance minister of the country and probably had also engaged in a lot of the deals and payments as far as this country is concerned. What are you today? Are you satisfied with how far you are going? There's been a lot of criticisms that has come after both the Attorney General and the OSP, IOCO, and other, agencies that are all involved as stakeholders.
Well, I'm not sure what these criticisms are. If you are talking about the claims made by members of the NPP, those are to be expected. They belong to a political party. If their members are held to account, you would expect them to say some of the things they are saying. But it is not everything they are saying that is accurate or is it right or is even reasonable. The fact is that during the campaign, we made it clear that we will wage a relentless battle against corruption. Mm-hmm. And one of the tools that we were going to use was Operation Recover All Loot, which has the dual objective of holding people to account and taking steps to, as much as possible, recover whatever it is that they've taken that belongs to the state. Now, this is a promise that we made that found significant resonance with the people of Ghana, and many have supported it. In government, we have lived by that promise. And as I speak to you, in just about 6 months, there are 4 people who are already standing trial for various acts of alleged corruption. The Edubuanin case, the SkyTrain case. Indeed, I can announce that on Friday, the Attorney General will make a major briefing on another major case under oral.
A new one coming up.
Absolutely. And he will put out what he has found so far and the steps he is taking to hold those who he believes may have acted wrongly or unlawfully in that regard to account. And there were over 280 cases that the oral committee unearthed. They handed it over to the president, who immediately handed it over to the Attorney General. The Attorney General gave those cases to various investigative bodies to look into. As I speak to you, there are close to 70 people who have been hauled in, questioned, some of them granted bail. A number of them are already standing trial. My understanding is that either by the end of this week or early next week, another group of people will be sent to court on another matter, which the Attorney General will be briefing on Friday. That will not end. The Attorney General has spoken about several dockets that are ready to be prosecuted. And so everybody can attest to a willingness on the part of this government to live by the promise of oral. The president has made it clear that he is not going to interfere in this process. I have heard MPP officials say that they are organizing a delegation to go and beg the president. Well, if Wuntumi, who himself has come under scrutiny as part of the oral arrangement, if they feel that he has said things that they want to apologize for, that is all well and good, but it is not going to affect in any way, shape, or form the processes that the law enforcement agencies have begun to hold him to account, as they are doing for everybody. President Mama has also made it clear that as for corruption, it doesn't matter under which regime it happens, whether it happens in his regime or it has happened under the SY regime, he will hold people to account. He has a record of doing so. There are people in his government previously who he held to account, put before court to be tried. And therefore, his track record is clear. Let nobody be in doubt about the commitment of the president and the government to ensure that we nip corruption in the bud and save scarce public resources that could go into more productive expenditure, more beneficial and useful expenditure for those purposes. Closely related to this are other measures that the president is adopting to save costs. When we were in opposition, he indicated his willingness to cut costs in a way that saves the public purse and enables us accrue sufficient resources to invest in those areas that have utmost importance: education, health, agriculture, infrastructure, and what have you. And he's been doing that. Look at the size of government, for instance. He even promised to work with 60 ministers. Currently, he's working with 56 ministers, and everything is fine. If there's any difficulty in government, it does not emerge because we don't have 60 ministers. That shows that we can even do with fewer ministers. In addition to this, if you look at the staff of the office of the president, and there's a matter that came up
which you've explained and explained.
But that one has been explained. The thing is that there are civil servants and then there are political appointees. Under the MPP, there were about 700 civil servants, and there were about 300. In fact, at the last count, there were 336 political appointees under the Akufo-Addo administration. As I speak to you, if you look at the number of political appointees at the office of the president, if you add staffers to support staff, it is about half of what the MPP had. That means that we are saving half of the resources that were expended on these people when the Akufo-Addo administration was in place. If you look at the number of ministers, when we're at a certain point under President Akufo-Addo in his first term, he had 126 ministers. Today there are 56, which is less than half, I should say, of the number of ministers that the Akufo-Addo administration had. Now, the president has made further cuts. Yesterday, I put it out that if you come to the Flagstaff House, the president has said that nobody is permitted to subscribe to any satellite television, whether DSTV or any other.
DSTV thing.
Or any other.
I giggled. Why?
No, it is necessary. People may trivialize it and think that it is nothing. But when you put the figures together, how much it costs for each office to subscribe, it is a significant amount that can be used to do something else. The president says, look, it's a complete waste of resources. If you want to watch DSTV, do so at home and pay for it yourself. But don't come to work and do it. Yesterday, he himself announced certain curbs that he has put in place regarding the allocation of fuel coupons and fuel allowance and the drawing of fuel by public officials. It will be strictly regulated and reserved for only verifiable, important national assignments. Beyond that, you are not going to get fuel to go around the city and do your own private business. If you put the figures together, these are significant amounts that the president is saving through these cost-cutting measures. So, closely related to exacting accountability from public office holders is a policy to limit public expenditure to those things that are absolutely essential and necessary for the running of government and for the effective implementation of government policy to the benefit of the Ghanaian people. Because we cannot spend a huge amount of the money that we collect from the people on those who govern at the expense of those that are being governed. And this is the policy that President Mahama has laid down quite clearly.
How, you said that the AG has, invited over 70 people.
Well, it's not the AG, there are basically three investigative bodies.
Okay,
there's the CID of the police, Ghana Police Service, there's IOCO, and then there's NIB, National Intelligence Bureau, all of whom are cloaked, I beg your pardon, with investigative powers. There are several teams within these agencies that are conducting the investigation. So if you put all the people they've invited and interrogated, some of them they've cautioned, some of them they've granted bail and what have you, it's over 70. I'm sure, and this is as of last week or so. I'm sure the list would have increased over the last week.
My wonder is how some of them get into the public by either the investigative bodies themselves.
I don't know what you mean
holding
by some
press conferences and telling.
Yes, but it is not just, you see, oral is
when
like,
I heard Matthew Opoku-Prempeh said he'd be invited, I was very surprised.
Why were you surprised?
Because nothing was read or
yes,
said
it is
in
not,
the press conference.
Yes, it's only a few that have been spoken to publicly. Ordinarily, when you are invited, it is not something that is subject to fanfare.
Yes.
It is only the initial steps of an investigation. So it is necessary that you are spoken to. Sometimes you are cautioned, they take your statement. Sometimes it's just to seek information from you. You may not necessarily be under arrest, or that you could provide some information that will help to unravel a particular matter. But after sufficient information has been gathered, you see that the Attorney General engages the Ghanaian people to account for his actions, because the Attorney General is a public official.
Yeah.
The power that he uses is vested in him through the mandate that the people of Ghana gave the president, who has also appointed him as Attorney General. So there needs to be an accounting to the people of Ghana on how that mandate is being used. Again, oral was a specific campaign promise, just like any other. So much the same way that we speak about gains made in the economy, or what we are doing to fight galamsey, what we are doing to ensure that law and order prevails, an accounting must be had on how oral is being implemented. And when the Attorney General does that, he doesn't convict anybody in public. Indeed, nobody is convicted on the basis of what the Attorney General says. The place where conviction takes place is the court. So persons who are accused have every right to go to court, respond to the charges leveled against them, and show evidence to the effect that the state does not have any case against them, that they have no case to answer. When that happens, given the systems and processes that exist, the judge will evaluate the evidence and come to a conclusion whether or not one is guilty or one is innocent. When that happens, you are acquitted. When you are found guilty, the appropriate sanction is applied. And this has happened over and over and over again. So there's no difficulty with speaking about specific alleged offenses. What matters is that due process is followed, and those who are accused are given every opportunity, to the extent that it complies with Ghanaian law, to defend themselves.
But those who are currently in the public domain, obviously suffering from probably the court of public opinion because of the information the public has now. For example, if you pick the Ken Oforiatta case, the family man has had to come in. Have got to come in with a statement, demanding the removal of their family member from the wanted list, from the red alert list that he's been captured on.
Well, that is directed.
They just feel like once you put it out like that, whole press conferences, what are you trying to do?
No, but the law enforcement officials have a right to engage the public on their work. The Ken Oforiatta case falls under the purview of the special prosecutor, the office of the special prosecutor. So there's little that government or the Attorney General can say about that. But the point is that public officials live their lives in the public glare, in the full glare of the public. Everything you do comes under scrutiny. And therefore, if you are put in public office and you are found to have done things that run contrary to expectation or Ghanaian law, it is the duty of law enforcement to make you answer for same. Now, law enforcement have a duty also to be transparent in the work that they are doing. Sometimes when an arrest is conducted and news filters in, certain sections of society create the impression that somebody is being witch-hunted or unfairly targeted or persecuted. So when law enforcement has information that justifies specific action they've taken, I think it is in order. Yes, there's a court of public opinion, but nobody goes to jail or suffers any penalty in the court of public opinion. Where you suffer such penalty will be in the law courts. But before
public judgment.
No, but if you are able to show, that indeed that judgment is inaccurate or the claims that are being made are not true, I don't think that the public can hold it against you. Your freedoms and liberties will not be curtailed by the views that the public hold. It is only the court that can do so. But the threshold is significant. For instance, if it is a criminal trial, you are accused of committing a crime, the one accusing you, that is the prosecution, must prove it beyond reasonable doubt. In other words, there must be no scintilla of doubt in the case they make against you. If there is a scintilla of doubt, despite the existence of other evidence, the judge will rule in your favor, because personal liberties are safeguarded by the Ghanaian Constitution, and it is a duty of the courts to preserve such personal liberties. So the courts won't sentence you if a shred of doubt is raised about the case that the state brings against you. So the processes are fair. But as for public commentary, when you live in a public space, public commentary is something that you have to get used to. All of us are subject to public scrutiny and public commentary. I don't think that any public official should have difficulty having him or herself discussed. What matters is that no evidence is fabricated against anybody. It must also be appreciated that the people who give the mandate to those of us who are in government deserve to know what we are doing with the mandate. So if I come and arrest you, and for a number of days, even if it is lawful arrest, lawful detention, and for a number of days, nobody hears about why you are being held, it creates a problem. It is a duty of those who are holding you to tell the public why you are being held. It is up to the public then to evaluate whether what they have said provides sufficient grounds for you to be taken through the process that you have gone through. So it's a way that imposes a certain check on law enforcement officials. And this is done globally. If you go to the United States of America, when Donald Trump, who is currently the president of the United States of America, was accused of some wrongdoing, the prosecutors publicly engaged the American public through the press and listed what the accusations were against Donald Trump and what charges they were preferring. People who watch international media know that this happens all the time. In fact, court proceedings are in fact public events, unless otherwise stated by law or the court or the judge prohibits it.
Yes.
But when you go to court, any document that is put before a court, it's a public document because it goes on a public record. Except that courtrooms cannot accommodate many people, so very few people go. You in the media go and cover court sessions, don't you? And you report. So there's no secrecy. Everything that the prosecution says against you in court, it's a matter of public record. The public will hear anyway.
But it's also
so there's no difficulty.
It's also been said that the government is rather seeing fighting corruption more when it actually prosecutes its own, not necessarily going
that is true.
After its
That is true. I agree entirely. President Mahama agrees entirely with it. That's why he has said that he is going to wage the corruption battle in a manner that is colorblind. He doesn't care whose ox is God. He has said it clearly that he is not going to interfere. And that don't call him if you happen to find yourself in a situation like that. That's why we need to be careful as public officials so that we don't fall foul of the law. President Mahama has the distinction of being perhaps the only president under the Fourth Republic who had cause to put members of his own government on trial. I'm talking about members of his party on trial, people that he himself had appointed to positions. There are some that he dismissed on account of suspicion of wrongdoing or even the expression of a certain intent, not that the crime has even been committed. So there is a man who has a track record of doing that, and therefore when he says that that will be his posturing in government, I'm sure that the people of Ghana believe him. That is actually why they voted for him so overwhelmingly. So oral is a promise that is being kept.
You are not discouraged, at every step that you're taking, because we see how some legal I don't want to use the word gerrymandering, but legal attempts are being made maybe to either frustrate the issue or to make a case for the accused. For example, we have Edu Boahen demanding financial records from 1992. He has his own court issues that he's raising against what he's fighting now with the state. You have Kenneth Oriata also doing his own things and telling us he's not well, he can't come down. He's given us his medical record. His family is fighting on his behalf and stuff like that. Are you not discouraged at any point in time? And are you not seeing what is ahead of you? Because you seem to have a lot of 280 cases already. Not all of them are in the records of oral.
But the point is that every accused person has the right to mount as robust a defense as possible to ensure that his or her personal liberties are not curtailed. Therefore, I don't have a problem with an accused person who makes a demand for some documents to the extent that he or she believes it will help their case.
Okay.
It is up to the judge to determine whether that request is reasonable and should be complied with. That is all. And Ovurata has a right, his family has a right to seek to uphold his rights and ensure that he's not treated unfairly. But again, there are processes, there are systems that are used to determine the veracity of such claims and maneuvers. And therefore, a judge eventually will decide whether to grant it or not. I don't have a difficulty, and nobody should have a difficulty with that. If the prosecution itself feels that these are frivolous attempts to frustrate them, they know exactly what to do to draw attention of the judge or the court to it so that certain actions are taken. In fact, the very idea behind taking somebody to court is to ensure that due process is followed and that a fair trial is observed so that people who are innocent are not sent to prison. Because as the saying goes, it is better to have 1,000 guilty men on the streets than to have one innocent person languishing in prison. So no effort must be spared, I should say, by the defense to ensure that the liberty of their client is preserved and protected. I don't think that will frustrate seasoned prosecutors. They understand that that is a terrain and it comes with the work. And they themselves also have ways to fend off such efforts to frustrate their work. So I don't see a problem at all in my candid view. You may have your own views as to whether or not the provision of that volume of documentation is even relevant to the trial. But it is not for us to say, it is for the judge to determine whether that request can be granted. Yes.
Let's get into the issue of the economy.
Sure.
Maybe you can tie in Galamsey because of time, just so you can. So, of course, we're dealing with the good news of dollar. It's not really good for some people, especially yesterday I watched a number of videos from our foreign brothers and sisters who are not happy at all because they want the monies that they remit into the country, to be more. So tell us what is with the dollar. We've had the communications about Gold Board and its efforts and what it has done with the gold. Okay, I'm told that we're supposed to, producers, please come through. I should take a breather. Okay, let me just take a breather. When we come back, we'll talk about the economy, the dollar, the situation. Are we able to sustain this? The energy sector levy that's also come in, and that has been also on the table for debate, but we'll be back shortly.
MGL Logistics and Supply is your trusted partner, providing seamless solutions for all your procurement needs. From sourcing products to managing imports and exports, we ensure smooth and efficient transactions every step of the way. Whether you require goods from across the globe or need assistance in exporting your products to international markets, we got you covered. General trading is at the heart of our expertise. We specialize in a wide range of products, catering to various industries and markets. As a trusted dealership in building materials, we provide high-quality products that meet the demands of our construction projects. Additionally, we act as manufacturers' representatives, connecting producers with distributors. Our expertise in logistics is the backbone of our operations. We plan and execute transportation and delivery of goods, ensuring they reach their destination on time and in optimal condition. MGO Logistics and Supply, guaranteed satisfaction.
I'm a brand manager. Of course, I accept only quality and affordable printed souvenirs for my promotional campaigns.
I'm the head of academic affairs of a very important institution in Ghana. Of course, we only deal with quality, reliable printing companies for our institution's printing materials. I'm talking about appointed time printing.
Appointed Time Printings. We take pride in our extensive print scope that transform your ideas into captivating visual masterpieces. We delve into the core objectives and vision of each print project. Precision printing is at the heart of our printing process as we meet your tight deadlines. Our rigorous inspection, color verification, and overall printing excellence are assured. 20 years of printing excellence. It's always a pleasure working with you to create a vibrant, dazzling printing experience that gives you a masterpiece. Appointed Time Printing, your world of quality and affordable printing.
All right, welcome back to the program. We're in a studio with Felix Ofosu, who is presidential spokesperson and MP for Abrasebu Kwamankese constituency. Felix, so let's get into the economy. I earlier on, gave you a hint about the dollar, the performance of gold board that has come in that I think a lot of noise is being made about it, and that is what has actually propelled this economy into where we are today. Let us understand exactly what the issue, how this performance happened.
Well, I think there's no doubt that in the lead up to the 2024 elections, the biggest ticket item was the economy. And the generality of the Ghanaian people had simply had enough of the suffering under the Akufo-Addo administration, which had completely mismanaged the economy, ran it down, essentially collapsed our currency, collapsed our economy, had saddled us with unsustainable debt, had in fact defaulted on debt repayments. Inflation was skyrocketing. The cost of living was escalating on a daily basis, and people simply could not make ends meet. So President Mahama rightly promised that he was going to take a serious look at the Ghanaian economy, reform it, salvage it from the doldrums in which it was, and ensure that the cost of living comes down so that we reduce hardships. And true to his word, since we've been in power, we spared no effort to ensure that this happens. Now, one of the biggest contributory factors to the problem we had with the economy, the hardships and the escalating prices, was the instability in the Ghanaian currency. At a point, sometime in 2022, the dollar rose by astronomical margins against the cedi. The cedi moved from 6 cedis in July to 17 cedis in November. And this created severe hardships for the people of Ghana. In fact, as of January, when we came into power, if you did a transaction on the OP market, you could get a dollar for anything between 16 to 17 cedis. So this was a problem, and that is because we are a country that significantly depends on imports. Many of the things that we need, the essential things that we need on a daily basis, are imported. So when importers go to imports and the cedi has depreciated, they need to take more cedis to buy perhaps the same amount of dollars. And because they are in business to make a profit, when they come, they pass it on, the cost, the additional cost, onto the consumer, like you and I. And that is what was accounting for the daily rise in the price of goods and services. So if we were going to stem that tide, it was absolutely imperative that we controlled the exchange rate and bring it to a level that was acceptable. Now, how are we going to do it? The dollar or any other foreign currency is like any other commodity on the market. The more of it you have, the less expensive it is. So the problem we've had over the years is that we have not had sufficient foreign exchange to meet our needs. So it was necessary to create a system that gives us sufficient foreign exchange at all times to be able to use to do the things that we need to do so that prices don't get out of hand. Now, in opposition, in fact, in 2020, we promised to establish the gold board, which essentially was going to be the lead government agency that controls gold purchase and export. What was happening is that there are people involved in small-scale mining who mine gold and go out of their way to sell it on the market and keep the proceeds. The proceeds don't come to a center. Government, the Bank of Ghana, have no control over it. And yet, we are in dire need of dollars, and other foreign currencies. So what the gold board essentially does is that they mop up gold produced by small-scale miners. Mm-hmm. They buy it in cedis, and then they export to obtain dollars. When they obtain the dollars, they give it to the Bank of Ghana. That puts part of it in its reserves, puts part of it on the forex market for people who need it. And then part of it goes to government to meet its obligations that are in foreign currency. So it is because of this arrangement that there is a liquidity on the foreign exchange markets. Indeed, only last month alone, $1.1 billion came into the country through gold exports by the gold board. The previous 4 months.
So currently it has no competitor.
The gold board is a state entity, it's a monopoly, it's the only entity that has the authority to purchase gold for export. In fact, in addition to small-scale miners, as of the last recording, there were 7 large-scale mining companies that sold 20% of the gold they produce. They ceded it to the gold board. In fact, there are discussions to bring on board an additional 9 large-scale mining companies who would also give a certain portion of the gold they produce to gold board. When that happens, they are able to export and get much needed foreign currency to ensure that our reserves at the Bank of Ghana are in good shape. And as I speak to you, the Bank of Ghana, if I'm not mistaken, has reserves that are getting close to $12 billion, which is significant, the highest we've had in this country's history. At the same time, they have enough.
But that means that the Bank of Ghana can support some struggling state institutions, even though he has declared a 0%.
No, the Bank of Ghana is not allowed to finance government.
I know.
That leads to inflation. They are simply not allowed by their law.
Okay.
If you want forex from the Bank of Ghana, you go and buy it, like any other commodity. That's all. But the Bank of Ghana cannot take money from their votes and give to government, as they did under the Akufo-Addo administration, which led to a 63 billion Ghana cedi loss.
Yes, I mean, I know.
Which was an earth-shattering loss, never experienced in the history of Ghana. So they are simply not allowed to do that. Then we have committed ourselves to limiting the Bank of Ghana to monetary policy and not the financier or the cashier or the printer of government, as it were. So once the cedi gains strength.
So I'm not going to mention any state institution, but state institutions that are calling for the support of the Bank of Ghana to rescue them from their debts that's swallowing them.
No, the Bank of Ghana is not. The Bank of Ghana has a policy of providing emergency liquidity support.
Yes.
They can advance money to you, but it is only a loan. You pay back. So it is up to you to engage them.
Agree.
Yeah, to agree on the terms, and then they will advance it to you. It's part of their.
Okay.
They do that to bail out banks that are in difficulty. But those are short term.
Okay.
Facilities that they extend to banks, but they are not freebies. They have to be paid back.
Okay.
So that must be placed on record. But I was making the point that once the cedi gains strength, it cascades and dovetails into everything else. So people who import are now compelled to reduce the price of their items because they don't need as much cedis as they did before to get the same amount of goods. And that's why you find that there are industries, some in the brewery sector, who have actually reduced their prices. Indeed, I just found out only yesterday or the day before that iron rods, a ton of iron rods, has reduced from close to 9,000 Ghana cedis in January this year to around 7,000 Ghana cedis in some places. There are other items too that have reduced in price. Fuel prices have fallen 8 consecutive times since the beginning of this year because the importers, the bulk distribution companies, import crude oil with foreign currency, and they need to mop up cedis to be able to buy that foreign currency to import. So if they need less cedis now than they did before, it will translate into price because 3 things account for fuel prices. The first one is the price of the commodity on the market. The next is the exchange rate. The exchange rate also influences the price because, for instance, if you buy fuel at $100 a barrel and you buy 80 barrels, so you are talking about $8,000. However, if you buy it at $80 and you still bring in 80 barrels, you are talking of about, let's say, 96 or 9, sorry, you are talking about less than $8,000, as it were, because of the way that the currency has risen. Now, if you need the cedi equivalent of $8,000 in January, is higher than the cedi equivalent of $8,000 today.
Yes.
So because of that, the price of fuel will drop. And then there are taxes.
Yes,
the
but
taxes
there's also the issue of the price of fuel on the world market itself.
But I'm saying that is impacted by the exchange rate. For instance, if the exchange rate at the beginning of this year was 16 cedis to a dollar,
yeah.
So you have 16 cedis to a dollar, and you are bringing in, let's say, 1,000 barrels of crude oil. It will cost you $16,000 to do so. Understand me? Mm-hmm. If, for instance, you need 1 cedi, you need $1, and it costs you 16 cedis, and let's say the price of crude oil is $1 on the market, so you need 16,000. If you are bringing the same quantity, and it is still $1, but this time it is 10.5. Mm-hmm. You need $10,500 to do so.
Yeah.
Or 10,500 cedis, I beg your pardon, to do so. Now, if you are spending 16,000 and now you are spending 10,500, surely it will affect the price at the pump. And that is how come fuel prices have come down. So that is the impact that the foreign exchange has. Even if the world market price rises marginally, but the exchange rate goes down, the overall effect will be a downward trend because it will cost the importer less to import. That is why exchange rate is, perhaps it is the most vital component of fuel pricing, and that is why you see it reflected. Once fuel prices come down, transport operators also are then compelled to bring down their fares, and that's how come the GPRTU agreed to do a 15% drop in their prices. Once that also goes down, those who use transport to bring in goods to sell also pay less transportation fares, and that also means then that they have to reduce their fares. So it has a certain knock-on effect across the market, and that is how you reduce hardship. So everybody will testify that things are less expensive now than they were at the beginning of this year.
So this has been all the effort of this government.
Absolutely.
Nothing international.
First of all,
no international factor, as we've
what
mentioned,
international
Trump
factor?
And his
How?
Because
if you go to a neighboring country, Nigeria, for instance, their naira has been crashing. So it's the same global environment, not so. Or do Trump's policies affect only Ghana and not other countries in the world? So it is not due to anything that Trump has done. It is due to deliberate effort by this government to manage the currency and manage the. And it's not only the currency we are managing. We are taking care of inflation. So now inflation is lower than we measured. We measured at 23%. Now it is 18%. Only this morning, it has emerged that growth, the economy has grown by 5.3% in the first quarter compared to 4.9% in the last quarter. So indications are that the economy will grow higher than was anticipated at the beginning of this year. If you look at other indicators like the deficit, which measures the difference between your expenditure and revenue, it is coming down. The primary balance, which is the most important indicator in this whole IMF program, because it is the thing that shows whether you are being prudent or not. And as I've had cause to say before, the fundamental principle of economic management is that you don't spend beyond your means. Once you don't do that, you are not going to fall into debt. If you look at the primary balance, the NPP left a primary balance of negative 3.9. That is, if you take our revenue and expenditure and deduct interest payment or debt service, which is statutory, it's obligatory, you can't do anything about it. That is what shows you how you have managed your revenue and how you have managed your expenditure. Currently, as I speak to you, at the last reckoning by the Bank of Ghana, it emerged that by the end of April, the primary balance is now showing a surplus of 0.3. Meanwhile, we've committed ourselves to doing a surplus of 1.5% at the end of this year. So we are clearly on course to achieving that.
By end of this year.
By the end of this year. Yeah, but these are first quarter figures. So the second, and there's every indication that the second quarter figures will reflect
all things going
to reflect this trend. You also see that the finance minister is controlling expenditure. He's not spending and now the president and the finance minister have insisted that no government project, no government purchase can be done without a commencement certificate. That forces you to stick within your budget. You can't do anything outside of the budget. So for instance,
so when we have a program like 24-hour economy, finally rolled out, what's going to happen?
So the 24-hour economy, as we explained, is supposed to ensure that our economy runs throughout the day, throughout the night, so that the economy never sleeps. When you do that, you have economic expansion. There's more economic activity. More economic activity means
higher productivity.
Higher productivity. Higher productivity also means more money. More money. Simply put. Because, for instance, if Metro TV, you run a 12-hour shift, and people can advertise only from morning to the time that you close, you get a certain amount of money. But if you can operate outside of those 12 hours and extend by another 12 hours, and you get additional advertising, that is more money for you. Is that not the case? So you are then able to invest in your systems, expand, and then the cycle repeats itself, you make more money. So that is what the 24-hour economy is all about. It's also geared towards generating additional employment, because unemployment, I would argue, was perhaps the second most important issue in the elections that we just had. And you notice that a lot of young people supported the NDC and voted for President Mahama because they were dissatisfied with the lack of action on the part of the previous government and were convinced about the propositions that President Mahama was making. And therefore, if you have a 24-hour economy and companies are running around the clock, it means that they will have room for more hands. And that means that there will be more employment. That's why we say 1 3 3. So it's one job, there are 3 shifts. So you need 3 people to do it. Now, away from that too, there have been tangible, concrete job creation programs. So Ejumera, which is an entrepreneurial and business incubation program aimed at targeting 10,000 people and setting up 2,000 businesses this year. Then there's a national apprenticeship program, which targets 500,000 artisans in the next 4 years. Now, if you look at our unemployment figures, we have close to 2 million people who are unemployed. Now, if we are able to take out 500,000 people and give them skills and equip them to set up their own businesses and trades permanently, you've knocked off a significant chunk of the unemployment roster. And that is a very significant
the challenge for the government is how our inability to continue those programs.
Why not?
Government comes in.
Why not? I'm sure there have been efforts. There have been efforts in that regard in the past. But what you are going to see is more consistent dedication and more resource allocation to the program, so that more people can be trained that way and they will find employment. If you train somebody to be a hairdresser, and I have a practical experience of this because between 2020 and 2024, when I was contesting for elections in AAK, over 2,000 young people benefited from a similar program that I initiated. I gave them sewing machines, I gave some hair dryers, some I gave barbering equipment, and other equipment and tools, so that they can be trained. And once you train the person and you've given the person a machine, she is going to sew clothes for people in the neighborhood who will pay for her services. So through that, she's able to fend for herself, and she will not require government to give her another job. If you come to education, for instance, we've implemented the no fee stress policy. The last time I gave an update, over 41,000 people had accessed the portal, which was open for people to register, and I've actually finished their registration. I suspect that disbursement will start sometime this year. That is what the Student Loan Trust Fund folks told us, and I believe that they will do so. If you look at the policy that we introduced on curbing period poverty, the free sanitary project is ongoing. I believe that the initial stages targets about 3 million girls, and they are being given sanitary towels to take care of themselves during that time of the month. So this government is doing a lot, and all these expenditures are clearly catered for in the national budget. So you will find that there will be significant limitation on budgeted expenditure, such that we will not expose ourselves to huge deficits, which then lead to the incurring of huge debts. That is how you manage an economy, so that things don't get out of hand and you don't fall back into the cyclical period of hardship.
So we're expecting that if you are alluding this to effective and prudent government economic management, then should fuel prices on the world markets go up, we can still work within our capacity as a government.
Of course, you know that in the downstream sector, there's what we call full deregulation. So it is the market forces that are at play. So there are 3 factors: the cost of the world market price of crude oil, or oil or petroleum products that they bring in, the exchange rate, that is the rate at which they need to exchange the cedi for the dollar, and then taxes. Now, often taxes are stable, they hardly change, but the exchange rate is the one that is volatile. But if the price of crude oil or petroleum products don't rise beyond a certain level, you are still going to have some stability. Often, because of the way we've done it, even if there are increases, they are very marginal, small, as opposed to doing huge increases because you fail to do it within a certain period. So we don't anticipate that fuel will become more expensive than it was. What is certain is that for the foreseeable future, fuel will remain cheaper than it was in January this year when we took over. Yes, and that is how important the exchange rate is.
If you can touch on the energy sector levy that we're dealing with now.
Yes, I think that we've had cause to explain that it was a difficult decision. It was not a decision that we took lightly. We appreciate the concerns that Ghanaians have expressed, but it was necessary. in order for us to overcome what is the biggest danger to this economy, which is the energy sector. The energy sector has suffered from historic mismanagement, especially under the previous administration. They did things that have incurred huge debts. We came to meet a total debt profile of 67 billion Ghana cedis in the energy sector. This must be paid for. Otherwise, it becomes something that hangs over the sector.
It's 80 billion now.
Yes.
According to the energy
Because
minister.
more of it is on earth, but what is on record as of now is 67 billion. Now, it is not that government has waited to impose a levy before it can pay down this debt. In the budget this year, the finance minister has allocated 23 billion Ghana cedis to pay off part of that debt. But in addition to the debt itself, which has built up over time, is a continuous accrual of debt, because electricity is not sold for the price at which it is generated. For many years, the honest truth is that the price that we pay for electricity does not reflect the cost of producing it. The Akufo-Addo government took a decision that they were not going to factor in the cost of buying fuel to fire our thermal plants and the cost of capacity charges. So what you and I pay does not include those, but the fuel must be bought. It is government that must buy the fuel. It costs $1.2 billion annually to do so. In fact, already this year, the finance minister has had to give the energy ministry $300 million to import fuel to fire thermal plants. If it continues, we will need $1.2 billion. Now, this is not money that is readily available. So if government does not do something about it and find a way to finance it, it will create fuel shortages, which will then affect our ability to produce electricity, which will then mean that we have to do power rationing, which has its own implications for the people of Ghana. The hardship it brings, the discomfort, the heat, the darkness, and the low productivity, because it cripples the manufacturing sector, it cripples the industrial sector, it cripples the economy in its entirety. And we cannot afford to allow that to happen, because the consequences will be severe, they will be grave, they will impact us very, very adversely. That is why this has become necessary. But it is not a levy.
E-levy was not necessary.
No, but the levy was a product of self-inflicted mismanagement. The Akufo-Addo administration, I have given you evidence of how we are managing the economy and avoiding the sort of debts that they incurred. They mismanaged the economy. If you look at their deficits, they did 3 or 4 consecutive years of double-digit deficits. They increased our debt from 120 billion to 750 billion Ghana cedis, which then meant that no amount of money they had was going to be enough to run the country, because debt servicing was huge. In fact, they got to a point where they told people who they had borrowed money from that they could not pay. That's why they gave Ghanaians those harsh haircuts, which completely destabilized many families, because their source of income, which was the proceeds of bonds, no longer came, because government said they could not pay. It was at that moment that they became desperate and had to impose e-levy. So e-levy is significantly different. It was a result of mismanagement, which led to severe hardships for government and the people of Ghana. But this one, you see clear evidence of proper economic management, prudent use of resources. We are talking about a government whose president has said that he will cut allocation of fuel to government appointees. He says he won't allow anybody to go and subscribe to, satellite television at the expense of government. He has cut the number of ministries, cut the number of ministers, cut the number of political appointees at the president, so that we don't spend more money than is necessary. So the government itself, the president himself, I beg your pardon, is showing commitment to living frugally, not to waste the money of the people of Ghana. So you can be sure that any money that accrues out of this levy will be used for the specific purpose. We will account for it. Ghanaians will know periodically how much has come in and how much has been spent. But ultimately, what it will lead to is that it will ensure stable electricity supply. Also, this approach is a better option than making consumers pay through electricity bills. Because if we were to factor in the cost of fuel and capacity charges into electricity pricing, it will mean that we will pay 50% more than we are paying, which will be too much.
Which is realistic, though.
Too much. That would be the realistic tariff, but it will be too much for people to bear. So if you put it on fuel, the amount is lower, and then it is spread over a wider band. And that then means that we are able to address the problem in a way that is sustainable.
Over what period are we expecting this?
First of all, the reason why we are even having to buy fuel is that whereas gas is cheaper, it costs just $10 per MMBTU. That is million British thermal units. That's how they measure the amount of gas that you use. The equivalent of that in oil is $61 per barrel of oil. So already it costs 6 times more if you use fuel than when you use gas. So ideally, if we had sufficient gas, we need about 600 million standard cubic feet a day of gas to be able to fire our thermal plants, and that will make electricity tariffs much cheaper. Currently, we have about 400 million standard cubic feet of gas a day. So we need between 150,000 to 200 more. As I speak to you, there are efforts to bring on board a second gas plant, subject to the availability of additional gas from the oil fields. There are also plans to increase gas intake from Nigeria so that we bridge that gap. If that happens, we won't need to import fuel.
But we're not considering alternatives.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Of course,
I mean, that has been on the table.
Renewable energy.
Yes.
Renewable energy is one of the options that is being looked at. So more investment will go into solar energy, wind energy, and all those renewable energies that come at a cheaper cost over time than if you use fossil fuels. But in the interim, what we have is a heavy reliance on fossil fuels, on petrol, fuel, which is expensive. Somebody has to pay for it. If we say that government should pay, it will be difficult for government to have the money to pay, and that would then lead to crippling power cuts, which we all do not want. So yes, as the president has said, it is not something that he did lightly. It was an absolutely necessary step.
And we're saying that we're ring-fencing what the revenue we're hoping to generate.
Of course.
We can trust government on
that. Absolutely. But this is a government that has shown that it is trustworthy. We will render accounts. It will be open and transparent. When we set up ESLA, up on it until the time that we left, we managed it prudently. The MPP government came and completely mismanaged it. They applied hundreds of millions of it to paying pensions.
ESLA.
ESLA, yes. It is an increase in ESLA.
Yes.
Yes, there's a component that is supposed to go to paying down the energy sector debt and purchasing fuel, and that is what we have increased by 1 cedi per litre. So it is a painful measure, but it is necessary. But I guess that the reason why we will have public confidence and public support is that we will manage it
efficiently. It's when you are able to render accounts.
We will do so. There's no difficulty. In fact, the ESLA, as it exists now, has an accountability mechanism. The finance minister is supposed to account to Parliament every year on how ESLA funds have been utilized. So the same mechanism will be adopted to render accounts on how it has been utilized and what the gains have been since its implementation. Yes.
We have just about 1 minute to wrap up, but can you say a word or two to us about Galamsey? What have you done so far?
Yes, I think that compared to the period preceding our coming into government, there has been an improvement in the situation because of a consistent effort by this government to tackle the problem wherever it rears its head.
Where is that improvement?
But it is clear, it is obvious. You see the actions of duty bearers. You see the police, the military, the lands ministry, and all other players towards addressing it. Only 2 days, was it yesterday or the day before, there was a report of how some illegal operators in Galamsey had set up an illegal fuel station to provide fuel for the machines that they use, which has been destroyed. Last month or so, it emerged that a village where thousands of people were living and who engaged in Galamsey has essentially been dismantled. It doesn't exist anymore. They have been flashed out.
But that's not an improvement. That's efforts.
No,
You're making efforts.
No, Annie. If in the past people could build fuel stations to provide fuel for the machines they use to engage Galamsey.
Specifically for Galamsey.
Absolutely. And today it is not there. That clearly means that the Galamsey they are doing, at least in that location, is not going to continue.
You are continuing the fight.
But there's an improvement because in the past, there were thousands of people living in a village who were doing Galamsey. If they don't exist anymore, Galamsey will reduce. You've also seen arrests. Indeed, in the last few months that we've been in power, close to 200 excavators have been seized. Vehicles have been seized.
But more specifically, is the law. What you said.
Just a minute. Over 80 people have been arrested. Indeed, there's a new policy. In the last 2 weeks alone, 1,250 excavators were imported, all of which have been impounded at the port. There's actually going to be a law which says that if people who import excavators don't get licenses, permits, they cannot import it. To get a permit, you must show that it is going to activities other than Galamsey. If you cannot justify why you are bringing in the excavator, if you don't show documents, evidence that you are a construction company or some company that has use for the excavator, and that it is not going to go into Galamsey, you will not even be allowed to import it, let alone clear it at the ports. So this is a significant measure aimed at curbing Galamsey. As for the law, there's an LI, which essentially contains regulations regulating an activity that is provided for by law, which is mining in forest reserves. So as I speak, it is lawful to mine in forest reserves, except that you must do it in compliance with law. So there are large-scale companies, the Newmonts of this world, who are operating in forest reserves. The concern is that they should not go into forest reserves in the first place. That is one category of people. They are mining responsibly. They are able to reclaim the land because they have the capacity and the wherewithal and technology to do so. Then there are illegal miners who are simply destroying the environment and have entered forest reserves to do same. So currently, the position is that you cannot do it unlawfully.
But that's not what we're told.
No, but if you listen to me, the LI enables people to do something.
Illegal activity.
No, the LI enables people to do lawful mining in forest reserves.
Okay.
That is what it is. If you repeal it today, nothing regulates lawful mining in forest reserves. The way to do it is that in the LI, the president is giving power to grant licenses for people to mine lawfully in forest reserves. We are taking out that power. So the president can no longer do so. Apart from those doing it now, no new persons can go and do it. And then there's a Minerals and Mining Act, which is going to be amended to make it impossible for anybody to mine in forest reserves, whether legal or illegal. That is a comprehensive way of addressing the problem. And that is what we have sought to tell the people of Ghana, so that they appreciate that we are going to keep the promise that we made. We are going to even do more than we actually promised by putting in place robust legislation, systems and processes that make it impossible or nearly impossible for people to engage in galamsey. Yeah.
Felix Ofosu is presidential spokesperson and member of parliament for Abrasibo Parliamentary constituency. Felix, I'm grateful for your time. Thank you so much. And that's what we have for you this afternoon on Good Afternoon Ghana. We're back tomorrow with another session. Thanks for watching.
Launching. Emily Ministry present album launch. Join us on Saturday, 21st June 2025 as we celebrate the second launch of Emily at Daddy Boating. 4 p.m. sharp at Spring of Life Auditorium within Grace Mission Hospital behind Summer Lodge, Efian. Live